The final week of region play is upon us. Welcome into the Shelby County High School Football Show. My name's Alec Etheridge, the managing editor here at the Shelby County Reporter. We're glad to have you on board for another edition of the show. Had to take the last couple of weeks off as I had surgery a couple weeks back, but glad to be back and for probably the biggest week of the high school football season, as it is the final week of region play. And there's a ton of big matchups on the schedule this Friday night locally here in Shelby County. You're going to see one of them right here behind me on this field at Warrior Stadium as the Thompson Warriors, number 1 in Class 7A, play host to the number 2 Hoover Buccaneers. Another game between these two. They sit in the top 5 for the 7th consecutive matchup coming into this game on Friday night, and yet again for the region championship and the number 1 overall seed heading into the playoffs, which means home field advantage throughout. We're going to talk a ton about that game, obviously the game of the week for several different reasons, but so much more happening this Friday night. We've got teams that are battling just to get into the playoffs. We've got several teams that are going to be doing that. We've got Montevallo. They'll be battling for a playoff spot. Chelsea and Vincent, they have outside chances, going to need some help, but they can get into the postseason as well. And then you have Briarwood and Oak Mountain, both in big seeding matchups as they look for a better seed with a win this Friday night. You've also got the Pelham Panthers. They look to finish region play undefeated, already crowned region champions. So we're going to talk about all of those games. We've got some other matchups taking place with no playoff implications, but still a lot on the line in terms of pride and looking to close the season out on a high note. So we're going to talk about all the big games, break them all down, get you ready for the final week of region play. And we obviously are going to start right here at Warrior Stadium for that big top 2 matchup. It doesn't get any bigger than this game between Thompson and Hoover, and we've said that for the last 4 years in a row. It's still hard to believe that going into the 2017 season that Thompson had never beaten Hoover in school history, but that quickly changed. They won that matchup in the regular season that year, and they've won the last 3 in a row in this series, looking to make it 4 in a row this Friday night, and that includes some big-time moments in the semifinals of the playoffs the last 2 years, as well as the regular season last year. So they're going to look for another regular season win now. Both these teams likely to meet again in the semifinals here in a few weeks as well, looking for that trip to the state championship as Thompson is looking to defend their Class 7A state championship. And so far this season, both teams have looked like the best 2 teams in Class 7A. You've got the Hoover Buccaneers sitting at number 2 in the 7A classification. You've got the Thompson Warriors sitting at number 1, both 9-0 overall this season. It's come a little bit easier at times for Thompson. There have been some close matchups for Hoover this season, but they're going to be ready for this one. They know they've lost 3 in a row. It doesn't take much to get a Hoover football team up. They've been the kings of this state for so long until Thompson came in, started seeing that success a few years ago, and now Thompson's been to back-to-back state championship appearances because they've beaten Hoover in the semifinals the last 2 years in a row. So you know there's a little extra edge for the Buccaneers coming into this matchup, and they've got the talent, as much talent as anybody that can beat Thompson. This is one of the few teams that's going to be able to match up with them for the most part. I still think Thompson's got a pretty big edge from the talent that they're going to put out there on the football field, but Hoover's one of those teams that they just churn it each year, year in and year out. They have the talent to compete with the best in the state, and they've played a difficult schedule to this point. Anytime you're competing in Class 7A, Region 3, you're taking on a difficult opponents every week of the season, including in non-region play too, as these are 2 of the best teams in the state. They're going to draw some of the better teams as well. So a big matchup between these 2. You look at what they have on paper, both playing extremely well on both sides of the football. You've got a Thompson team that's averaging 43.7 points per game offensively, giving up just 14.9 points per game on the defensive side, and Hoover not too far off that mark, 40.3 points per game on the offensive side and 16.9 points per game given up defensively. So about a 2 to 3 point differential there between both sides of the ball in favor of Thompson going into this matchup. And you look at the players on the field, and Thompson is loaded on both sides of the football. There's no way around that. You look offensively, Connor Harrell, still just a junior, stepped in this year for Sawyer Pate, who was an all-state quarterback last year, had a tremendous football season, and Connor Harrell stepped in, and they haven't skipped a beat this year. The junior quarterback here at Thompson has thrown for more than 2,000 yards easily already this season, and has several games where he's had 4+ touchdowns as well. That's almost a given each week as well. And he's a guy that can take off with his feet. He hasn't done it a ton, but what he does is extend plays. He doesn't look to run first, even though he has that athleticism. He uses it instead to look downfield and keep his eyes downfield to find one of the plethora of receivers that he has on that offensive side of the football. You look at guys like J.B. Mitchell, who can easily top 100 yards each week at the receiver position, and then throw in Sam Reynolds, Ryan Peppins, and Trey Roberson. Those are 3 other guys that could easily be playing Division I football here in the next year or two. So that offense is so talented for Thompson, and that doesn't even include running back Jarrett Crockett, who's been a little banged up throughout the year, but had bounced back last week, played against Oak Mountain, and looked good. He'll be leaned on heavily as well on the offensive side of the football, including an offensive line that's been tremendous this year, blocking for all of that talent as well. So you've got a strong Thompson offense, and then you look on the defensive side, and you've got guys like Jeremiah Alexander, one of the top linebackers in the country, Tony Mitchell, who has really come on strong this season, especially the last few games. In the secondary, he can play all over the field defensively on that backside, and he's had a tremendous season as well. With interceptions, fumble recoveries, he's doing just a little bit of everything so far this season. So a strong showing from those 2 guys, but that's just the start. You've got guys like Jax Van Zant, Tristan Woody, Greg Green, and the list goes on defensively for the Warriors. This is the best all-around talent they've had on that side of the ball. Still very young as well, but the best all-around talent they've had on that side of the ball in several years, giving up just 14.9 points per game, have 2 shutouts in their last 4 games, gave up 9 or less in 3 of their last 4, and 21 or less in several of the last several weeks of the season so far. So this is a defense that's gotten better. Early in the season, struggled a little bit against teams like Oxford, against Spain Park, gave up 21 to Hewitt-Trussville, but in that game you could kind of see them turn the corner against a solid opponent and a solid offense, and that's where I think they gained a lot of their confidence, and they're playing like a top-tier defense, and they're coming into this matchup against a Hoover team that's got a solid offense coming off a game last week against Oak Mountain. Thompson forced 2 scoop-and-score fumbles, one of which from Tony Mitchell went about 35 yards. The other from Greg Green went about 80 yards. So they're attacking the football. They're finding ways to get the ball back to that dangerous offense, and that's where this team becomes so dangerous. Now, Hoover, they've got some talent. They've got quarterback Josh Lundy, who's had several big games so far this season. Going into last week, 3 weeks in a row, I believe, he had thrown for more than 300 yards and several touchdowns in each game. And they also have a plethora of running backs. That's the key to this team, is that they have so many running backs, and they've had several so far this season that have gone over 100 yards running the football this year. And it seems like it's a different guy each week, and that's what's dangerous about this Hoover offense. Not only can they do it with Lundy at the quarterback position, but they've got so many guys you've got to account for in the backfield as well, running the football. So that's going to be the danger that they pose to Thompson's defense. Now, Thompson's front 7 is solid, and that's what's going to be difficult for Hoover to match up with. And you look at this Hoover football team, while they're talented and while they should be able to compete in this football game, they have struggled with their toughest opponents, and they've given up some points to some of those good teams like Hewitt-Trussville, like Spain Park, and then defensively or offensively, they've struggled to score against the best defenses they've played. So in those big games, they've been in some close matchups, and they barely edged out Vestavia Hills earlier in the season as well. So they've been in some tightly contested games. Now, that could benefit them because Thompson has not. Their closest game, a 13-point victory against Spain Park, and that game really didn't feel that close either. That was a game that Thompson really kind of dominated from start to finish. They just couldn't get the stops they needed defensively to pull away and win that one big, but they still get a fairly easy victory, and it seemed easy throughout the season. I know they're putting in the work, and it's not as easy as they're making it look, but that's what the one thing that I worry about in this game for Thompson is if they get a little bit complacent. They haven't faced that true adversity yet so far this season. If they face that early deficit, how are they going to react to that is going to be the key. But when you've got an offense they could be down 21-0 going into the second quarter, going into halftime, and you still have confidence they're going to get things going and come back and at least make that a competitive football game. So I don't have a doubt that this is at least going to be a tight game for Thompson, if not them pulling away in the second half. But you look at this Hoover football team, they should be able to compete. It should be a fantastic one between these two teams, as should be expected when you've got the number 1 and number 2 teams going up against each other. But at the end of the day, Thompson's got the home field advantage. They've got the talent. I think that they have a slight edge going into this matchup. I would expect them to win by about 14 points here on Friday night. Going to be a fantastic atmosphere. Can't wait to see this game. I will be out here covering that one here for the Shelby County Reporter. So make sure you're following along. We'll have our Facebook Live show here from our game of the week before that game. So make sure you tune into that as well. Going to be a fantastic night here at Warrior Stadium. The other 2 playoff teams from Class 7A Region 3, they'll be taking part in a big game this Friday night as well, as the Oak Mountain Eagles travel up to Hewitt-Trussville for a big matchup in regards to seeding. This is a game, the winner of this matchup will be the 3 seed out of this region going into the playoffs, so a little bit of an easier first-round matchup there in the postseason, as they would take on a 2 seed instead of a 1 seed, whereas the loser of this one will be the 4 seed and will have a little bit more difficult first-round matchup in the postseason. So big in regards to seeding for Oak Mountain and Hewitt-Trussville, and I think this is going to be a fantastic football game. You look at what these two teams have done the last 2 years, and they've racked up the points. You look at last year, a 50-33 win for Hewitt-Trussville, a similar matchup the year before. The offenses have come out swinging, and they've shown some promise. And this year, you could see something similar, but you've got 2 teams that love to run the football, so it's going to depend on what the defenses do. If the defenses are able to hone in on the run game and make some stops, you may see a little bit lower scoring of a game, whereas if they're not, then you're going to see one that's a shootout yet again. And I think that you've got 2 offenses here running similar styles in regards to running the football. While they're going to do it differently, you've got a Hewitt-Trussville offense that's a little bit more spread out, but they've got 2 solid running backs led by Armani Goodwin. He's going to be the leader there for the Huskies in this game. And then you've got an Oak Mountain team led by Evan Smith, the quarterback, and Judah Tate, the running back, that love the option attack, and they're going to come out and show you a little something different in regards to running the football. But nonetheless, 2 teams that are going to power their way through this football game and hope that one of those running backs or quarterbacks is able to find a rhythm early and keep it going throughout. So you're going to see 2 teams that are, you know what you're going to get. They're going to line up. They're going to run the football at you. It's a matter of being able to stop it. And I think you're going to see a close game, whether the defenses show up or it's just the offenses. I think you're going to see a very tight football game between these 2. They know what's on the line. Oak Mountain's going back to the postseason. They're pumped. They've got a lot of confidence. Even last week against Thompson, that was a game where you saw Oak Mountain struggle, but that really could have been a lot closer of a game if it weren't for those 2 scoops and scores right there before the half in the final 2 minutes. That was going to be a 1 or 2 possession game at the half against Thompson, and then the second half was a much faster paced game as far as the clock goes. Neither team really put up a ton of points. Oak Mountain could have been in that game within a score or 2 in the second half if it hadn't been for those 2 fumbles. So if they can take care of the football in this game, do what they know how to do, Oak Mountain's going to be right in this matchup with a Hewitt-Trussville team that should be a strong postseason contender. So I think you're going to see the Eagles have been close in this matchup the last couple of years. I think you're going to see them have a strong chance to pull off the upset, pick up a big win in this game, and a contender to get that 3 seed out of this region. But you're going to have Evan Smith and Judah Tate step up on the offensive side of the football, and they're going to have to take care of the football. They cannot turn the ball over in this game because Hewitt-Trussville will make you pay with what they have offensively. Now, for Oak Mountain's defense, this is one of the better defenses they've had in a while. I expect them to show up and have a big game as well. And if they're able to combine everything, this is a team that could be victorious at the end of Friday night, but going to take a lot against a very good Hewitt-Trussville team. We'll see how they handle it on the football field, but I expect a tight one between these 2 Class 7A Region 3 foes. We've got 2 teams in this matchup sitting at a combined 4-12 on the season, 2-6 overall for both of them coming into this matchup. So all about pride. Neither one of these teams going to the postseason this year, but it's the final region game. In the last few years, we've seen Spain Park struggle at times, but they've ended the season pretty strong. I think you're going to see something similar this week. This is a team that still has loads of talent, and that shows by the way they've competed against the top 2 teams in the state. They were within a few points of losing by 13 to both Thompson and Hoover this year. So this is a Spain Park team. What they have offensively, they're a strong contender each week. They just haven't had it consistently, and that's been the problem. Last week against Vestavia Hills, only scored 7 points, didn't find a rhythm on that offensive side of the football. And if they're going to win football games, they've got to do it there right now because the defense is still young, a little bit inexperienced. They just haven't had it yet so far this season. Started out a little bit better early in the season, but as it's gone on, the defense has kind of faltered a little bit. So the offense is going to have a big night this Friday night. And going up against Tuscaloosa County, there's a strong possibility of that happening. It's a Tuscaloosa County team that's giving up 32 points per game. Against an offense like this, Spain Park's got guys. Bennett Meredith, the junior quarterback there, has shown a ton of promise this year. You've got guys like Jalen Ward, Cooper Kelly, David Moultrie, Justin Pegues there on that offensive side. If the offensive line can step up, have a big game, if Bennett Meredith can get comfortable in the pocket and trust those guys to get open and his line to block for him, that's the key to success. Finding that early rhythm, getting an early lead, and then building off of that throughout. If they can do that, they'll come out victorious. But nonetheless, this is going to be a good game. This is a Tuscaloosa County team that's played some teams close, looked very similar to Spain Park. Normally, Spain Park should be the heavy favorite going into this matchup, but we've seen Tuscaloosa County play pretty good at times throughout the season. We've seen Spain Park be so inconsistent, we just don't know what we can get. But if they have that early rhythm, that early success, I expect Spain Park to come out victorious. You may think there's not a lot on the line for the Pelham Panthers going into this matchup with Chilton County on Friday night as far as a fan, but for the Panthers, everything's on the line. This means that they would finish undefeated in region play with a victory and keep their confidence rolling. This is a team that we talked to them before the season. They felt like they were state championship contenders, and that's coming off a season last year where they won just 3 games. Now, they won those 3 games in their last 4, and they won them all in a row, and they gained some confidence at the end of last season. You could see a very young football team start to gain some recognition, some confidence going into this football season, and they've built off of that. They're now sitting at 7-1 overall, still undefeated in region play, already crowned region champions to get home field advantage in the first round of the playoffs as the number 1 seed out of this region. But the job's left unfinished. They know that there's a lot that they're still working toward, and this is a team that practices to get better every day of the week. And Coach Causey hasn't been able to rave enough about this group of players, and I've seen it firsthand. This is a group that they believe in each other. They want to play for the person next to them, and it's shown off on the football field. They have a lot of camaraderie together, and they're playing like a true football team. The defense has gotten better and better each week of the season. They were so young last year, still young this year, but it's a defense that's just played so well the last few weeks, starting in the second half against Chelsea, and then they give up 12 and 18 the next 2 weeks, so less than 20 points. That's solid defensive showing to pair with an offense that's got Dylan Peterson, who goes over 100 yards seemingly every week, Gabe Gamble, another running back with that same talent, and Darius Copeland, who showed up and started running the football and went over 100 yards in their last game as well, and he can do things all over the field for that offense. And then you look at the quarterback, Will Langford, and other guys like Chase Christian and Christian Copeland. It's a very talented offense with an offensive line that's had to plug guys into different places throughout the season due to injury, due to different situations, and they've all stepped up. This is a very talented offense going up against a Chilton County team that has struggled on both sides of the ball, and Pelham's coming off of a bye week as well. You look at what the Tigers are doing defensively. They're giving up close to 30 points per game against this Pelham offense. Pelham's going to take advantage of that. They're going to score points in this game, and that's where the difficulty comes because Chilton County's only scoring 13 points per game on the offensive side of the ball. I don't see them having nearly enough to keep up in this game unless Pelham comes out complacent and they get too much in their own heads and don't take this game seriously because Chilton County has struggled so far this season. But I don't think that's going to be a problem with what we've seen from them this year. I think they'll be ready to go to get to finish region play undefeated and keep that confidence train rolling into a matchup with rival Homewood, non-region game to end the regular season, and then going into the postseason. One of the biggest games this week is going to take place at Homewood as the Briarwood Lions travel over to take on the Patriots in a game that is huge for playoff implications as far as seeding goes. The winner of this matchup is going to get the 2 seed behind Mountain Brook in this region. The loser's going to get the 3 seed. The difference in that, the 2 seed gets home field in the first round of the playoffs. The 3 seed goes on the road in the first round of the playoffs. So a very big matchup, and they both know what's on the line going into this game on Friday night. And you've got 2 very solid defensive football teams that have played great on that side of the ball so far this season. So Briarwood defense giving up right around 15 points per game, and Homewood giving up right around 20 points per game. So you're going to see a strong defensive battle between these two teams. They're physical teams, love to play defense, pound the ball offensively with their running backs. That's going to lead to this being a tightly contested game. But both have struggled offensively as well, which is going to make it even closer. I would expect this game to be no more than a combined 30 points. I would think one team may reach maybe 20 to 24 points and the other maybe 14 to 20. So it's going to be a very tightly contested game because both defenses are playing well. Both offenses have struggled at times. You should see this one go down to the wire in the fourth quarter. You look at Homewood, they're sitting at 5-3 on the season right now, and 2 forfeit wins as part of those 5 wins so far. Briarwood 6-2 with one of those 6 wins being a forfeit victory. The big thing for Homewood, though, they've scored less than 24 points in every game, and they've scored 17 or less in their last 3 in a row, including a 28-0 shutout loss to Mountain Brook last week. Briarwood, they've struggled on that side of the ball as well, but they've also shown some promise. They lost to Mountain Brook 17-7, played them a little bit better, and beat Shades Valley 42-19, who Homewood lost to 34-17. So you think Briarwood has an advantage in this game. They've got such a strong defense. They've got Luke Rebels offensively, but the key is going to be what Christopher Vizina can do at quarterback. Can he protect the football? Can he have that confidence in his receivers who have been a little bit inconsistent throughout the season? If he can find that confidence, if they have that rhythm going offensively early in this game and can build a 14 or 10-0 lead, any lead in this game for either of these teams, it's going to be tough for the other to try to find a way to fight back because of how good the defenses are. But I think the Lions, if they can get to 20 points offensively, which they've done several times so far this season, they don't give up more than 21 points in the game. They've given up 21 or less in every game so far this season. So if they can get to that 20 mark, I think that's going to be the key, and I think that's a strong possibility. I would expect Briarwood to win this football game, but nonetheless, 2 good defenses. This is going to be a tight battle. I wouldn't be surprised by the team that has the ball last having a chance to win this one at the end of the night. Chelsea Hornets still have an outside shot to make the playoffs. Now, their road may be the most difficult in the state as they have to take on number 1 Mountain Brook this Friday night. And not only do they have to win that football game, but they also have to hope for Shades Valley to lose to a Woodlawn team that has not won a football game this year. So they'd have to pull off one of the biggest upsets in the state, and then hope for one of the biggest upsets in the state as well. So it's going to be a tall task for them to make the playoffs, but Chelsea, the way that they play football, you wouldn't know that there's anything on the line or any way that they aren't going to make the playoffs this Friday night, because they play like they're having a chance at that every week of the season. This is a team that is so physical. They love to get out there and compete, and that's part credit to head coach Dustin Goodwin. This is a team that, since he got there, has shown a lot of that kind of fight, and the talent hasn't quite been there, especially on the offensive side of the football yet, as the quarterback position's been so inconsistent. Now they're without starting running back Collier Blair, who tore his ACL a few weeks ago. So a tall task to ask this offense of Chelsea to go up against a Mountain Brook defense that's given up 7 or less points in almost every game so far this season. The only game they've given up more than 7 points in against Thompson, the best offense in the state, and that's the lowest output that Thompson's had this year, those 31 points. So this is arguably one of the best defenses in the state, regardless of classification. You've got a Chelsea offense that has grown so much from the start of the season, but losing Collier Blair, you've got a sophomore quarterback in Hayden Garrison that's gained some confidence the last few weeks, looked really good on that side of the ball, but struggled last week. He's still got a lot of growing to do, and going up against the toughest defense he's going to see this season. It's a tall task to ask him to go out there and put up some big numbers, but he's the kind of quarterback that's not scared. He's going to make plays. He's going to go out, try to find some guys downfield. He's going to take the chances, and against a good defense like this, that's going to be difficult to complete those chances and take advantage. Nonetheless, you're going to see a team that comes out, fights hard. I expect, because of their defense, this is going to be a tightly contested game for a little while. Some people may be surprised when they look at the score of this contest, but their strong suit has been defense for most of the year. And then you look at this Mountain Brook offense, which has struggled so far this season. It's a Mountain Brook offense that has scored 28 or less in all but one game this season. So this is a Chelsea defense that can take advantage of that. If they can hold them to 28 or less, they may not score more than 7 points, but that still should create for a close game throughout, for them to have their chances, for Garrison to take the shots on offense. That's the thing. They have nothing to lose in this matchup. They can go out there and they can take those chances. Really isn't going to hurt them either way as they look to pull off this shocking upset. But should be a lot of fun between these two teams. A nice rivalry game. They get to play each other as Mountain Brook has now moved down to the 6A classification. This is going to be a fun one for years to come, and don't be surprised if it's a little bit more entertaining this Friday night than a lot of people expect. Another big opportunity this week for the Calera Eagles, obviously coming off a 49-28 loss to Wetumpka last week. But in that game, we saw Calera compete as they have all season. That's the first game they've lost by more than 8 points this season, and they were hanging around there late in that contest, but taking on one of the best teams out of their region, just a tall task to ask them to stick around throughout that game, especially with some of the injury concerns that they've dealt with the last few weeks there at Calera. But this is a team that's still super young, so much young talent on that team that's gotten better and better each week of the season, and now they're taking on a Benjamin Russell team that's sitting at 1-7 overall this season. You've got Calera sitting at 3-5, and even though 2 of those 3 wins are forfeit wins, 4 of their 5 losses, like I said, by 8 points or less, whereas Benjamin Russell sitting at 1-7, and they've struggled for the majority of the season. This is a Benjamin Russell defense that's giving up 38.8 points per game. You look at what Calera's got offensively, they're not scoring a ton of points per game, but against several teams this year, they've shown some fight offensively, especially in the second half. You look at sophomore quarterback Tyler Nelson and the weapons that he's got around him, able to make plays offensively. This is the kind of team that they capitalize on as far as the offense goes. I expect that to be the case in this matchup. I think Calera walks out victorious on Friday night. Strong chance for them to continue to gain some momentum, close out region play with a win. This is a team, while they're not going to make the playoffs this year, they have pretty much everybody back next year. They only had a couple of seniors on this year's team, especially in the starting lineup. So you look at what they've got back. This is a team that's going to compete really possibly for the top spot in this region in the next couple of years. So just looking to get that confidence, get a big win on Friday night against Benjamin Russell. That's the key in this game to carry on into their final game of the regular season, but not only that, into next season as well. It's pretty simple for the Shelby County Wildcats this week. It all comes down to this game against Jefferson in a strong rivalry matchup, too. A couple years ago, this one was really heated. Since then, head coach Heath Childers gotten control of this program, done a really good job with this team that's been a little bit inconsistent, and this year should have been a lot better than they have been, but nonetheless, they've got a chance to end a drought that dates back to 2009. That's the last time they made the playoff, the postseason. They'll look to do so again this year with a win Friday night. If they lose, Jefferson takes their spot and they go to the postseason. Now, Shelby County's the better team in this matchup. They were arguably one of the best teams in this region coming into the season with what they had returning on both sides of the ball, but particularly on the offensive side of the football. But that's where they've struggled, and that's been kind of shocking so far this season. They had so much talent back on that side of the ball, and now they've started dealing with some injuries the last few weeks. So the offense is going to be the key in this game, but the defense has been the key the entire season. It's a defense that's been arguably one of the most improved in Shelby County this year, one of the most improved across the state compared to what they were doing last year at this time. But they're taking on a Jefferson offense now that's giving up scoring just 19.6 points per game, and they've scored 17 or less in their last 4 games in a row, and 17 or less in 6 of their 8 games this season. So this is the kind of team. Shelby County's defense, this may be just the culmination of the season. What they needed to do to coming into the season to make the playoffs was drastically improve their defense. They've done that. Now is the time for them to prove it, and that it just hasn't been a hoax throughout the season. If they can come one last time defensively this Friday night against a struggling Jefferson offense, then they're going to make the playoffs for the first time since 2009. And I do think that that is the difference. I think that they know what's on the line. I don't think that they're going to be nervous. I think they're going to turn it into motivation and determination this Friday night. You've got a Jefferson team that's struggling to score points, giving up points defensively as well. And I know Shelby County's offense is struggling, but if Shelby County can get to 20, 27 points, that should be plenty to win this football game if their defense plays like they have all season. And that improvement on that side of the ball could be the difference in them making the postseason this year, whereas last year they just missed out. So we'll see if they can handle the pressure that's coming this Friday night, but I expect the Wildcats to be going to the playoffs because of that improvement defensively. They've got a lot of fight, a lot of determination. We'll see if they can make it come true. The Montevallo Bulldogs may have the most confusing path to get to the postseason this year. The easiest thing they can do on Friday night, beat Dallas County. If they can beat Dallas County in this matchup, they take the 3 seed out of the region. They're in the postseason. Now, if they lose, there's a very strong chance that they miss the postseason altogether. And I believe that would be the case. It's been confusing to figure out, but head coach Blake Bourne and I have communicated a little bit, and it sounds like if they lose this game, they will be the outside football team looking in when it comes to the postseason. West Blockton, they've got a matchup with American Christian, the number 1 team in the state. If they win that game, Montevallo loses, then you've got West Blockton as the 3 seed, and you've got Dallas County as the 4 seed. Now, if West Blockton wins, Montevallo wins, you've got those 2 teams in. Montevallo would be the 3 seed, and West Blockton would be the 4 seed. But either way, it looks like if Montevallo loses this game, then they're going to be missing out on the playoffs. Dallas County and West Blockton would have the tiebreakers in a 3-way tie situation in that case. So going to be a difficult path for the Bulldogs, but this is a game, what we've seen from them in recent weeks, this is a game they should win. They've looked like the better of these 2 teams. They ended up beating West Blockton 29-28. Dallas County lost a tough game to West Blockton. So I would expect this is a Montevallo team going up against Dallas County offense that's only scoring 15.5 points per game. You look at what Montevallo's been able to do at times offensively this season, especially if Joseph Anderson had 40 carries for 200-plus yards and 5 touchdowns last week, I believe. If he can continue that on the offensive side of the football this week against Dallas County, it's tough for me to see Dallas County scoring just 15 points per game, keeping up with Montevallo's offense in this matchup. So last week there were a lot of Montevallo players that weren't able to play due to different protocols, especially with COVID-19. Those guys hopefully back this week would be a big addition, especially up front on the offensive line and at other positions. But you look at what they've got, some guys that are inexperienced to start the season, have gained a ton of experience to this point. I like Montevallo to win this game, guarantee themselves a spot in the postseason. They know what's on the line, and I think they're going to bring it against Dallas County on Friday night. The Vincent Yellow Jackets also with an outside chance to make the playoffs this Friday, but like Chelsea, it's going to be one of the more difficult paths to make that happen. Not only do they have to beat Lafayette, but they're going to have to hope for Ranburne to lose a matchup against Fayetteville, who is 2-6 so far on the season. Now, I do think Vincent's got a strong chance to win against Lafayette, but I also think that it's going to be difficult to see Ranburne losing that game. And just to be in the situation, though, for Vincent, they lost their first 3 games all via forfeit to start the season. The difficult part is going to be that first region game that they had to forfeit against Ranburne, because that if they had been able to play that game and won that game, they would be in the playoffs already. So that's the difficult part of this matchup. But at the same time, to even have that kind of opportunity is pretty big, considering where they were after 3 weeks of the season. So they've lost 3 in a row after winning 2 in a row, but a strong chance against Lafayette this week. This is a Lafayette team that struggled at different times throughout the season, scored 21 or less in every game this season. They've relied on their defense, which has played good football so far. They're giving up 14 or less in every game, including 0 and 5 in the last 2 matchups. So this is a great defense for Lafayette. The problem is Vincent's offense has made some very good defenses look foolish this year. If Vincent can have one of those outbreak performances where they've scored 34 or more, 38 or more, they've scored 38, 39, and 41 in their wins against solid teams, solid defenses, I should say. They can do that against another solid defense, which I expect after the gauntlet they've taken on the last few weeks against the 3 toughest teams in this region, including a difficult one last week against BB Comer, but 2 weeks ago against number 1 Russell County put up 38 points. They can have that kind of offensive performance against Lafayette. You're going to look at a Vincent team that walks out of this game victorious on Friday night. They'll be having their fingers crossed also that Ranburne can pull off, that Fayetteville can pull off the upset of Ranburne. Our final game of the week, the Cornerstone Chargers, also with a chance to make the playoffs. They'll be taking on Lowndes Academy. They win this game, I believe that they do make the postseason. They sit at 2-2 in region, or 1-2 in region play, with Lowndes at 2-2 in region play. So Cornerstone wins this one, they would have the tiebreaker for that fourth and final spot going into the playoffs. But Lowndes is a team that's won 2 in a row against Lakeside and Coosa Valley. Now Cornerstone beat Coosa Valley 60-18 and Lowndes 42-0. So you might think there's a little bit more of an offensive advantage for Cornerstone, but this is also a Cornerstone team that's giving up 37.3 points per game and scoring just 14 points per game. Now, Lowndes has struggled offensively. They've scored just 14 points per game, but they're giving up 10 points per game less so far this season. So I think that's the difference. That defense for Lowndes should be the difference in this game, lift them to the postseason. But strong to see that the Chargers have a chance to make the playoffs. Now time to hand out some stars in our SCR Stars of the Week segment. Not a long list of players this week just because there weren't a ton of matchups last Friday night, but still some talented players on the list that had some strong performances a week ago. Connor Harrell, seems like we've mentioned him to every week of the season. He was 11 of 14, passing for 239 yards and 4 touchdowns against Oak Mountain. And in the second half, only had 2 or 3 possessions on the offensive side of the ball, put up most of that production there in the first half of that football game. So another strong showing from him as he seems to go over 230 with 4 or 5 touchdowns just about every week of the season. Defensively in that game, Greg Green and Tony Mitchell both had a scoop and score touchdown to get in and pop the ball loose, pick it up, take it to the house. Strong showings from them, and it was more than just that for that Thompson defense as they made some big plays throughout that contest against one of the toughest teams to prepare for defensively. Also on the other side in that game, Judah Tate, he continues to reel off big game after big game at the running back position for Oak Mountain, 179 yards and a touchdown on 30 carries against that difficult Thompson defense. For the Helena Huskies, had a couple of big-time plays in that game from Kobe Hughes as well as McGuire Turner, the quarterback, and Jaden Jackson. Kobe Hughes had 2 touchdowns. He continues a stellar season there for the Huskies. Really made a difference in that game, picking up a win in that matchup. So huge week for Helena as they continue to gain confidence. Looks like they're going to get the 3 seed out of that region with that win a week ago. And a big reason, McGuire Turner to Jaden Jackson, a late touchdown score on a beautiful play and throw and catch there for the Huskies to be able to pick up that win there, 25-18 against Stanhope Elmore. One that went down to the wire. They lost the lead there early in the fourth quarter, but then were able to battle back with those couple of touchdowns and got a late 2-point conversion as well to make the final 25-18. Big week for the Huskies. At Montevallo, 2 big names to mention. Joseph Anderson, obviously 44 carries, 273 yards, and 5 touchdowns in that big win a week ago to keep Montevallo's playoff hopes alive, 40-33 against Holt in that matchup. And Kyle Cottingham also made a difference. His pick 6 of 31 yards ended up leading the Bulldogs to that advantage that they needed there at the end of that football game. So that's going to do it for the SCR Stars of the Week segment. Plenty of names there, but next week I expect a lot of guys to be mentioned, obviously with so many big games and so much on the line this Friday night. That's going to do it for this week's edition of the Shelby County High School Football Show. Obviously, one of the biggest weeks of the high school football season so far. Going to be a fantastic night Friday night. Hopefully the weather holds up, but it's going to be fun out here. Number 1 versus number 2 with the top spot in the region on the line. Thompson Warriors looking to repeat as region champs and gain home field advantage throughout the playoffs on their path to repeating as state champions as well. So a big night here at Warrior Stadium, a big night across the county as well. Several teams battling for playoff spots, battling for seeding. It doesn't get any bigger than this week, the final week of region play, and it's just special that we get to have this week. Early in the season, obviously, didn't know if we were even going to make it past the first few weeks, and here we are, the last week of region play, 2 weeks away from the completion of the regular season and 3 weeks from the start of the playoffs. So a big Friday night ahead for all of our high school football teams here in Shelby County. We can't wait to bring you all the action, but until then, I'm Alec Etheridge, and we'll see you Friday night.